Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to those of you joining us from the Central and Eastern time zones. I hope you're all well. I'm Tad Bradley, the North American sales and marketing rep for Maya Trails, based out in West in Seattle, Washington. I'm also joined by Maya Trails founder and director James Rogers, who is on the line with us live from Guatemala City. Morning, Jimmy.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking your valuable time to explore Guatemala with us, and it's awesome to have you all on the line.
Yes, thank you all for joining us today to learn a little bit more about experiential and luxury travel in Guatemala. My connection personally to Guatemala goes back about a decade when I was first leading adventure treks for backpackers in the highlands of the country. I often led a 3-day trek which ended at beautiful Lake Atitlan, which is the photo that you see on your screen right there. My best Monday mornings of my life were descending to this beautiful scene on the lake, watching the sunrise over the volcanoes behind. It'll never get any better than that. But because of my history there, Guatemala really does hold a very special place in my heart. It's truly one of the soul places for me in the world, and a place I love to return to and reconnect and recharge. There is definitely something incredibly spiritual about Guatemala and about the country. I think a lot of it really has to do with the fact that it's at the heart of both the modern as well as the ancient Mayan world. And it has, as you can see in this photo, really stunning natural beauty. From the mountains and the highlands, there are 33 volcanoes, 3 of which are active in the country, to the thick jungles of the Peten in the north, which hold the center of the ancient Mayan world and hold so many hidden Mayan ruins and many secrets of that incredible civilization. But the way I travel today is certainly, in Guatemala, has certainly changed a bit since my backpacking days. I think there is a bit of a misperception about Guatemala as a mid-level or a backpacker destination full of group bus tours invading Tikal and Chichicastenango. But this is really so far from the reality and from the truth. And Condé Nast Traveler recognized this in their cover piece on Guatemala that you may have seen in the April issue. If you haven't read the article, please do email me or Jimmy for a link. It's really worth a read. The writers went a lot deeper than many into Guatemala, into the soul and the psyche of the country and the people. And it does offer a very nice glimpse and a preview of what makes Guatemala such an incredible experiential and luxury travel destination. I think the country is in a time of transition at the moment, and there are more and more opportunities for these type of real immersive cultural and adventure and experiential activities. So today we're going to talk specifically about Guatemala and about experiential and luxury travel. We'll gloss over very quickly Belize and Honduras, which Maya Trails also operates in. Be about 45 minutes with some time at the end for questions. If you have questions, just feel free to put them into the question thing on your control panel there, and we'll go through those questions at the end. We'll also I'm also recording this, so if you have to jump away for any matter, you'll know that you'll be able to watch this at your leisure at another time. So we're going to start in Guatemala and give you a quick highlights of the beautiful country. Pretty much every tour in Guatemala begins in Antigua, this beautiful UNESCO World Heritage Site surrounded by 3 volcanoes. It was the former capital of colonial Spain, so it has that incredible colonial feel. It's a small town, very easy to walk around and enjoy and absorb the atmosphere. It's only about 45 minutes from the international airport in Guatemala City, and most people land in Guatemala City at the airport and head off to Antigua straight away. Of course, as I mentioned, Guatemala is famous for the spine of mountains and volcanoes that run the length of the country. There are 33 volcanoes, 3 of which are active. You're looking actually at Fuego volcano steaming there. You can see a little bit of steam from Acatenango volcano, which is one that's just next to Fuego. There are opportunities to hike Pacaya volcano, another one of the active volcanoes, very accessible and easy hike for pretty much anyone of any reasonable fitness. We'll talk a little bit more about that today. Acatenango and Fuego require a little bit more time and a little bit more effort, but Pacaya is a great and easy volcano to summit. Of course, Lake Atitlan, you saw the photo at the beginning, probably my favorite place in Antigua, I'm sorry, in Guatemala, a collapsed volcanic caldera, high mountain lake. I often compare it to Lake Tahoe, except surrounded by verdant volcanic peaks instead of snow-capped mountains. And then we head up into the north, into the Peten, the jungles, where the heart of the ancient Mayan world and that great civilization is based. This is Tikal, of course, probably the most famous Mayan ruin site in Guatemala, if not in throughout the entire Mundo Maya. As I mentioned, Maya Trails also operates in Belize as well as Honduras, two surrounding countries. Belize is very easy to add to a Guatemala itinerary, logistically very simple, and it does complement Guatemala very well. Obviously, the second largest barrier reef in the world. Here's the Blue Hole, the famous Blue Hole. It also is a great adventure destination. Cayo District is your adventure capital of Belize. Here's the famous ATM cave for the real adventurous spelunkers in the Cayo District. And Belize is also part of the Mundo Maya, the world of the Maya. There are a lot of Mayan ruins in the country as well. And then just next door is Honduras. Honduras is famous mostly for Copan, which is often compared to the Paris of the Mayan world, whereas Tikal is the New York. Copan has a lot of beautiful artwork of stela, sculptures, hence a little bit more artsy like Paris, and Tikal famous for its very tall pyramids and structures, much like New York City. Roatan, the Bay Islands, also easy to add to an itinerary in Belize or in Guatemala. Fantastic diving, snorkeling, great destination for beach time and relaxation. Today we're going to focus really mostly on, well, entirely on Guatemala and on the experiential and luxury opportunities there. I'm going to kick it over to Jimmy for a second just to introduce the company a little bit more, introduce himself and his team there in Guatemala City.
So hi everyone, Maya Trails basically was born 8 years ago. Myself, I was born off of a tourism family. I got the tourism travel industry in my blood, dating back all the way from my great-grandfather. So I started the company 8 years ago. The photo you can see is pretty much the backstage team that you see that does the magic. You got way off to your right, you got Sophia, she's marketing. And then next to her, you got Adriana, then myself. Then you got Isabel. Both Adriana and Isabel are sales. And then you got Maria, who is operations. But whenever you need anything, they all know how to sell. They all know how to operate. Everyone knows every single detail and aspect of the company. And if you want to meet me in person, I'll be at the next trade shows. You can notice there at the bottom. I'll be at TMLA this year in September, WTM in November, ITB in Berlin in March next year, and Emotions in Buenos Aires in April 2017. So welcome and thanks everyone.
Thanks, Jimmy. And what I love about Maya Trails, as with all of our clients in the Cucini collection, it's really about creating, they're a small team, boutique operator that really gets to know and creates personal relationships with their clients. They're also incredibly creative. And as Jimmy said, they're all Guatemalans who are out experiencing the country on a daily basis, looking for new, exciting adventure and experiential travel opportunities for your clients. So they're on the ground, and they really do create some pretty exceptional and pretty creative itineraries. All you have to do is challenge them, and they'll come up with something really exceptional. Speaking of exceptional, I think that's one of the things that differentiates Maya Trails in Guatemala is their local guides. For many of you with high net worth individual travelers, with the luxury traveler, more than likely you'll have a tour leader, a guide that would accompany your group throughout the trip. And we have some great generalist tour leaders who know an incredible amount about the history, the culture, about the wildlife, about the geography of Guatemala. But we also, regardless of whether there is a tour leader who is a guide that is accompanying your group throughout the trip, we also then connect into local guides in each locale. So for example, in the upper left corner is Dolores, who is our local guide in Lake Atitlan. Dolores has an incredible life story that's too long to tell today, but certainly give me a call or shoot me an email. We can talk more about her incredible story. But she's an indigenous Tzutujil Maya woman who's from Santiago Atitlan on the lake. She lives a traditional lifestyle today. She continues to dress in traditional Mayan dress, but she spent 15 years living in the United States, so she speaks exceptional English, and that really allows your guests to get an insider feel to what it's like to be a Mayan person living in Guatemala, to understand the history and the culture of the Mayan people, the modern living of the Mayan people in Lake Atitlan. In the upper right-hand corner is a picture of Francisco Estrada Belli, who is a world-renowned archaeologist who Maya Trails can bring in as a real subject matter expert for those of you that have clients that want to rub elbows with a world-renowned archaeologist, or who have a particular deep interest in archaeology. These are the kind of guides that we can bring to the table and can really open up the experience for your client. You can see the photo here as it changes. That was the end of a fam trip that we did about a year and a half, 2 years ago. At the end of a long day touring Tikal with Francisco, we're at the airport and he's giving a presentation on the history of the Mayan, the ancient Mayan civilization. And you can see everyone is just enraptured with his presentation. So that's the level of guiding that we can bring to the table for your clients. Getting to Guatemala is really very easy. Anywhere from a 2.5 hour to a 4-hour flight, depending on the gateway or the hub that your clients would be flying out of. Delta flies from Los Angeles and Atlanta. United flies from Houston, Newark, and Dulles, and American from Miami and Dallas-Fort Worth. Each of those, as I said, about a 2.5 hour to 4-hour flight, depending on where you're departing from. Once you're in Guatemala, being around, the longest drive you'll have is about a 3-hour drive, but of course we can connect things with helicopters, which we'll talk more about, especially for the luxury traveler. For those that are flying up or going up to Tikal and the Peten area, there are daily scheduled flights up to Flores, which is the gateway to the Peten. From Flores, very easy then to connect by small plane over to Belize and to create a Belize and Guatemala combination itinerary. As I mentioned, helicopters, especially for the well-heeled, the executive level types that are coming down to visit. Guatemala actually has the second highest per capita ownership of helicopters in the world, so there are no shortage of choppers to jump, to heli-hop around the country. We do a lot of helicopter transfers from Antigua to Lake Atitlan. That's probably the most popular transfer by helicopter, and it's really worth, not just because of the time savings, but it is that spectacular flight over the highlands. You're flying over 33 volcanoes. You're flying over active volcanoes, over Lake Atitlan. You can see the Pacific coast and the Peten jungle. So it really gives an incredible overview of the country, and obviously provides a lot of time savings as well for those that only have a limited time in the country. Maya Trails also operates or owns the Hertz franchise in Guatemala. So as a result, they have access to mostly brand new vehicles. It's a fantastic fleet and a wide variety of vehicles, depending on the size of your group, depending on the desires and interests of your clients. Jimmy, if you want to talk real quick about the different options you have with vehicles, especially for the luxury traveler.
Yeah, basically we start off all the way from our economical, like a 5-seater small economy car. We head up to a sedan, a regular type sedan. We also have Audi A4 sedans for the more luxury, like the black car type. Then we go up to medium-sized SUVs, large SUVs, and then you got the BMW X5 also that you see in the left-hand corner. Then we got microbuses, the pickup trucks, the larger buses for like 20-seater passengers. So we got a full array of vehicles that are part of the Hertz fleet.
And that's what's nice about having that Hertz connection, is that the vehicles are refreshed every few years. So you're guaranteed, regardless of the level of your traveler, to have a new vehicle that's well maintained and in great shape. And regardless of the type of vehicle you'll be traveling in. Now we're going to jump into some of the experiential and luxury opportunities throughout the country, starting in Antigua. We'll also quickly go through some of the luxury accommodations that are available in each destination. So starting in Antigua, that, as I mentioned, UNESCO World Heritage Site. That's Agua Volcano in that photo, looking out over the town. Beautiful, beautiful Spanish colonial city. Because it was the capital of colonial Spain, there are no shortage of ruins of cathedrals, of monasteries, of convents. So Antigua is a great place to really immerse yourself in the Spanish colonial era. And we really recommend for almost every client to begin their trip in Guatemala, when they start in Antigua, is to go on a walking tour. We have several excellent local guides who can spend anywhere from a couple of hours to a full day introducing your clients to Antigua. It's a great way to get an orientation for the town. I also generally tell people, if you can build in time for your clients to do some self-exploration, Antigua is the place to do it. It's one of those places that you can get lost and you end up having an incredible revelation or finding something new and different. But having that initial orientation, that walking tour that gives a little bit of an overview of the town, as well as some insight into the history, particularly the colonial history, really helps for the first-time traveler. This is a very great, really the best way to begin your trip in Antigua. Guatemala also well known for its coffee production, and there are a lot of opportunities to get some hands-on experience, to learn more about the coffee industry in Guatemala, as well as you can actually make and grind and roast your own coffee and do it from a very hands-on perspective. There are a couple of options in and around Antigua. There are your more traditional coffee haciendas, which are great for someone who just would like to have more of the history, the overview of the process on a larger scale. And then there's more of the local community-based coffee tours, where you actually go out into the fields with a local farmer. If it's coffee season, you can go out and pick coffee beans, bring them back to the farmer's home, remove the coffee cherry, roast them, grind them, and sip a fresh cup of handmade Guatemalan coffee. For families, for larger groups, we also have a great active coffee adventure, or a coffee picking competition, where we can send groups out into the field with the farmers. And again, this has to happen during coffee harvest time, which is usually from about November, December through March, to go out into the fields and help the farmers pick and see who has the fastest hands of the group. This is a great experiential opportunity for multi-generational families or for larger groups as well. Guatemala also has cacao grown on the Pacific coast and in the Peten. So especially for families, we always recommend learning a little bit more about how to make chocolate. This is a farm-to-table chocolate making workshop that happens in Antigua at the Choco Museum. You can learn a little bit more about, especially for kids as well, learn about where chocolate comes from and actually learn how to produce it with a hands-on workshop, and then get to taste it at the end, which of course for just about everyone is always the best part. There's an organization in Antigua that Maya Trail supports called De La Gente. De La Gente is actually the organization that runs the community-based coffee tours that I just described, but they also have a lot of other activities and tours that connect your travelers directly with local farmers, with local artisans, and really gives you an insider experience, an insider view about what life is like for local people in the Antigua Valley. In the upper left corner is a photo of actually it's my wife and daughter. When we were there in September last year, we did the peanut butter experience. So a farmer who grows coffee and high up on the in the higher altitude fields. In the lower altitude fields, he grows peanuts. And they saw an opportunity for North Americans in particular who love peanut butter to do a farm-to-table peanut butter tour where you actually are shelling the peanuts, roasting, grinding, and then enjoying them kind of in a Guatemalan crepe on tortillas with honey and bananas. And my 2-year-old daughter absolutely loved the experience. It's a great thing for families as well. But there are all kinds of other options, and you can ask Maya Trails depending on the interest of your clients, from learning how to create a huipil, which is the traditional dress, the traditional shirt of the Mayan women, to woodworking, to ironworking, and all of these are connecting people directly with the farmer or the artisan themselves. The tours are led by the actual artisan, the actual farmer. Obviously, we can bring in a translator as well, but a great way to have an insider experience and a real in-depth immersive cultural experience. Also, De La Gente runs the community cooking experience for someone that wants to have a cooking class, but do it in a more traditional style, learn about how the local families actually make their meals. This is a traditional dish called chicken Peten, and this is really from, truly from the beginning of the cooking process to the end, where you start off with the live chicken and go from that all the way to enjoying the chicken Peten on the table. I think what most travelers really enjoy is learning how to make tortillas. Most gringos are very bad at making tortillas, and it's a great bonding experience for travelers and for the local Mayan women, as everybody's laughing watching us gringos try to make a flat and sort of round tortilla. Antigua has also got some incredible shopping for the traveler that wants to spend some time shopping for artists and crafts, shopping for fairly nice luxury-made goods that have a connection to the Maya people, that have some artistic merit to it as well. Jimmy, if you want to talk a little bit about what you guys typically set up when you have a shopping experience in Antigua.
Well, basically, we set up like a shopping tour, depending on what you need, what the guest pretty much wants. We take them all the way where the Mayan families, they customize the boots, they customize handbags, they customize the huipils, the shirts, the pants. You can even customize socks, belts. They customize everything, and with the Guatemalan typical style. We start off from small boutique shops all the way up to like the large markets. In Antigua, there's a large market where you get all type of handicrafts, woodworking. I've seen guests take back a 2-foot giraffe painted by this special artist here in Guatemala, and I don't know how they took it back, but they were able to take it. And pretty much we show them around the jewelry. Also, we got Guatemala is famous for the jade. We got the green jade. There's only green jade in 3 countries in the world. And we let them get lost. We show them around. We tell them, okay, here, 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 and then let them get lost and do their shopping.
IXCHEL, I think, is a great organization as well that integrates the traditional Mayan handicraft or the traditional Mayan fabrics into a lot of different types of modern fashion. So the boots there you see in the upper left, and they actually sell direct. They employ a lot of local people, a lot of artisans and craftsmen and women, and then sell directly into the North American market as well. So it's a great way to support a social enterprise, hands-on, when you're in Guatemala itself. You could buy these boots online today, but why not be able to actually go and see where they're made in Antigua? One thing, as I mentioned, Maya Trails has an excellent fleet of vehicles, but a lot of people in Guatemala, the locals really don't generally travel in Audis and luxury BMWs. They travel on chicken buses and in tuk-tuks. So while we don't generally recommend that our travelers hop on a chicken bus and go between Antigua and Lake Atitlan. For those that want to have that cultural experience of traveling like a local, we can set that up. One thing that we often do is do a short ride from the outskirts of Antigua in a chicken bus into town. It's about a 30-minute ride, depending on where you pick up the bus. Obviously, we bring a guide along so you can have some interpretation, learn a little bit more about the chicken bus, how they're created. For those that really want to learn more about the chicken bus, where it comes from, there's actually a tour of the fabrication shop. So these are all American school buses that get driven down through Mexico to Guatemala and then are really tricked out, customized into these beautiful, almost artistic pieces that you see on the screen there. Tuk-tuks are also, you see them all over Antigua and all over Lake Atitlan. And we oftentimes will do short trips in tuk-tuks just so people can have an experience within the town of how the locals travel. Lots of adventure activities around Antigua, from zip lines. There's several zip lines, one in a coffee plantation just outside town. Mountain biking is fantastic. Lots of great single track and less arduous mountain biking trails in the hills around Antigua, as well as using mountain bikes to get around the town itself, to explore some of the farms and plantations around Antigua. As I mentioned, there's a lot of hiking, volcanoes for the real adventurous that want to climb Acatenango. That's a possibility just outside of Antigua. That's a full day trip, can be an overnight trip as well. And then Pacaya volcano, very close to Antigua. And as I said, volcano trekking. This is Pacaya in the upper left. Probably the only place in the world where you can roast marshmallows and make s'mores over flowing lava or over some hot fumaroles coming from the volcano. Pacaya is a very easy 1.5 to 2 hour hike. Usually what we do is set up a picnic lunch at a viewpoint. You're not actually going to the summits of the volcano. You're below the summit, but the views are spectacular of the summit. You can see in the lower right the photo. That is the crater of Antigua. We're in the lava fields down below, and that's an example of where we can set up a picnic lunch for your clients as well. Guatemala is the sailfish capital of the world. It's probably a surprise to many of you, but it is considered the best catch and release sail fishing worldwide, and that's just about an hour from Antigua. You're at the Pacific coast. For those of you that have clients that are interested in fishing, we can set up a day or a longer itinerary that involves going out and casting a line for some of those amazing sailfish that are in large numbers just off the coast. Love this shot on the left, because where else in the world as well will you be hitting a fairway iron and be watching an erupting volcano behind you? Well, this is Guatemala. It's a beautiful golf course just outside of Antigua, La Reunion, which has these types of views of the volcanoes. It's also a luxury hotel as well. So if you have clients that are interested in golf, there are a number of options, most of them right around the Guatemala City and Antigua area. This is a very cool thing that we're just beginning to develop, the street food experience, the safe street food experience, let's put it that way, of going out and learning a little bit more about the street food that is kind of ubiquitous to Guatemala, probably to every South and Central American country, especially the big city, seeing the stalls of street food that all the locals are eating. Obviously, we take this, make it a little bit different for the traveler. You're not going to be necessarily eating from the stalls that all the locals do, but you get to taste and experience what that street food is like. Guatemala is a great culinary destination, especially Antigua and Guatemala City as well. A lot of great traditions from the Maya are integrated into the modern food, and this is one. If you're interested in a culinary experience, we have a example or a sample itinerary called Flavorful Guatemala, where we sample a variety of different food throughout the country, do cooking classes, and this would be the type of experience that we could integrate into a culinary tour as well for someone that wants to really get the flavor of what the locals experience on the street. I mentioned a great dining scene, especially in Antigua. We can make reservations at some of Antigua's top restaurants for your clients that are interested in sampling some of the higher end restaurants in town. There are all many, and all of them have a very atmospheric, very charming appeal to them. As you can see in the upper right, that's Panza Verde, which is one of the city's top restaurants, and it really has that colonial flavor that you can feel while you're having an incredible meal. For those that are looking to have larger groups, destination weddings, Jimmy and his team can actually set these types of things up in some of those ancient ruins of convents and cathedrals that exist throughout Antigua. So we can have, you can actually be surrounded by the history of colonial Spain as you're having a gala dinner for a larger group, or for those that have a wedding in Antigua. It's talk about an incredible atmosphere for either of those two events. Glamping in Antigua. This is a very cool and unique style of glamping using Airstream trailers that have been customized and upgraded. This is just outside of Antigua on some of the hills above, so it offers beautiful views of the Antigua Valley and the volcanoes. And each of the Airstream trailers has a hot tub and a fire pit and the beautiful views of the valley below. The Airstreams themselves are a little small, so this is probably not something you would do for more than 1 or 2 nights. But the inclusion of the outdoor deck and that area really makes for a very cool and unique experience in the outdoors. So we'll go through very quickly some of our top luxury hotels in Antigua, and most of these range in rack rates from about $250 to $600 per person, per room per night. So while they are on the high end of the spectrum and they certainly deliver all of those luxury amenities, the price in Guatemala is still incredibly reasonable. Casa Santo Domingo, probably the most famous. It's a restored convent, a restored monastery from the 16th or 17th century. One of the larger hotels. I think, Jimmy, how many rooms in Santo Domingo?
There's about 128 rooms.
So it sounds very big. But Jimmy, I know that on our last FAM, we took people there. We had people stay there. And almost everybody that visits Santo Domingo says, wow, I had no idea that it was 128 rooms. It feels like a small boutique hotel. So it really doesn't have that large hotel feeling because of the fact that you're immersed in history and culture of colonial Spain throughout the grounds. There's a beautiful pool, as you can see there. There's actually also a great museum, one of the better museums of Mayan archaeology on site at Santo Domingo. This place also can host destination weddings as well. I believe you got married at Santo Domingo, Jimmy?
Yep, I got married there 10 years ago this year, and part of our walking tour always goes through Casa Santo Domingo, even if you're not staying there, because it's just a museum at itself.
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to go through the rest of these relatively quickly so we can get to Lake Atitlan and the Peten, because I know we want to keep this to about 45 minutes. But there are about a half a dozen of our favorite hotels that have that same boutique colonial feel to them. Some of them are smaller. El Convento is in that 25 room range, beautifully restored convent as well. San Rafael, brand new boutique hotel right near the center of town. All of these are really well located as well for clients able to walk to the center of Antigua and to really immerse themselves in the Antigua colonial charms of Antigua. Casa Rosal, also a brand new boutique hotel, very high end. This is probably your top 5-star hotel in Antigua. Panza Verde, been around for many years, also a restored colonial mansion, has a beautiful roof deck. Posada de los Leones and Posada de Angel, one of my favorites. This is a smaller 6-room boutique hotel, has the views of the volcanoes from the roof deck where you can have breakfast. It's a pretty nice view to be enjoying as you sip your coffee and have your morning breakfast. This is actually most famous for hosting President Clinton when he visited Antigua in the late 90s, and they're still very proud of that. But it is of an incredibly high standard, and again, full of those colonial charms. A lot of them have fireplaces in the rooms because Antigua is up at about 4,500 feet. So in the wintertime, so November, December, January, February, it can get very cool at night, and they oftentimes can come and light a fire in the evening to warm up those rooms. Another option for guests, especially for larger multi-generational family groups, is the luxury villas that we can book in and around Antigua as well. So if you want even a more private catered option, the luxury villas are something that Maya Trails can arrange. So traveling now from Antigua over to Lake Atitlan, beautiful Lake Atitlan. Here's a shot from above. The drive into Lake Atitlan is one of the most spectacular in Guatemala. The view of this crystal blue lake surrounded by 3 volcanoes. Lake Atitlan also surrounded by 12 indigenous villages, and that's what makes this lake so special, is that indigenous culture that is very accessible for the traveler, especially when you have a guide, as I mentioned earlier, like Dolores, who is a native Tzutujil Maya woman who can really get you under the skin and get you that insider experience. Because of the 12 indigenous villages, there are a number of Mayan markets on Lake Atitlan itself. It also is only about an hour-and-a-half drive to Chichicastenango. While Chichi is definitely a big tourism destination, and you do have a lot of tourists that visit, especially on market days, on Sundays and Thursdays, we are able to, through, again, hiring local guides and the insider knowledge of the company, get people away from the real touristy parts of the market and go and experience what the locals experience. But beyond Chichi, there are a number of great markets at the lake itself, depending on the day that your clients are visiting. Obviously, these are they are usually once, sometimes twice a week. So we would tailor the itinerary based on the days of the week that the market is functioning. A lot of incredible Mayan traditions that go back thousands of years. One of the most famous in Lake Atitlan is Mashimon, which is this pagan folk saint, as you can see on the right there. Still to this day, there is actually a single person or a single family that is employed on an annual basis to take care of Mashimon. And the local people do come here and present offerings to Mashimon for success in business, for looking for fertility, what have you. It's a very serious thing for the local people, and it's definitely worth a visit. Very exotic, kind of interesting peek back into the spiritual history of the Mayan people. Lake Atitlan also offers a number of excellent women's weaving cooperatives that travelers can visit and learn about how the women in particular weave these incredible tapestries, skirts, and how they stitch their beautifully intricate and detailed huipiles, which is their Mayan shirts that you see. We actually, Dolores, who is in the photo in the upper left as well, you can see there, she is an incredible craftswoman, and she can actually spend a day with a client teaching them how to stitch their own huipil. So that level of hands-on interaction is very possible. For most people, you go and visit one of the cooperatives, and they show you a little bit about where they get the cotton, how they dye the cotton, and then how they utilize the backstrap loom to weave these beautiful tapestries. And then again, it gives clients an opportunity to purchase handicrafts directly from the women that have weaved them. For those that want to have a more insider experience in the market and are interested in culinary pursuits, we can set up a market tour, either Chichicastenango or one of the local markets in Lake Atitlan. You go with a chef and a guide, purchase ingredients for the cooking class, and then take it back to your villa. This is, in particular, there's an accommodation on Lake Atitlan called Villas Balamya that has a large kitchen, a chef's kitchen, where the chef can then utilize those ingredients and teach the group how to prepare a traditional Guatemalan meal. The lake also offers a plethora of adventure activities, from water sports like kayaking and stand-up paddleboarding to hiking around the lake to cliff jumping. As you can see in the far right, there's also parasailing. One of the most popular trips that Maya Trails offers is a kayak hike combination, and that's a half-day trip. You do about an hour to an hour and a half of easy paddling in the morning before the wind picks up, and then hike back along trails with the views of the lake, as well as through small farmers' cornfields, and it really gives a real immersive feel to Lake Atitlan, as well as a little bit of activity. Yoga has become more and more popular. Yoga trips to Guatemala. There are a number of great places where you can do a yoga retreat and have these incredible views of the lake and the volcanoes. And as I mentioned, getting to Lake Atitlan is by helicopter is one of the more spectacular, probably the most spectacular way to visit the lake. And that's a very common thing that we do, connecting Antigua in particular to Lake Atitlan by chopper. There are several accommodations that actually have helipads, so it makes it very easy to land right at the hotel. Speaking of which, Hotel Atitlan does have a helipad. This is more of probably a upper mid-level property, but we like it especially for families. It has this beautiful pool, great grounds, and it really works well for larger family groups because of their interconnecting rooms and things of that sort. Also, again, has that colonial feel to it. As I mentioned, Villas Balamya, they have, I think, 5 different villas. Several of them are complete with full kitchens, where we can bring in a chef to prepare meals or to do a cooking class, as I described earlier. Laguna Lodge, a little bit more of the eco lodge feel, but still a very high standard. This is a very ecologically friendly hotel in terms of how it was built, their energy consumption. They also have a restaurant that sources all of the majority of their food locally. It's actually a vegetarian restaurant, so one thing to keep in mind, but a very high standard of food as well as lodging. Casa Palopó is Guatemala's Relais Châteaux property. This definitely has a helipad and is certainly the most popular and probably the best luxury accommodation on Lake Atitlan, one of our favorites. And then there's also villas as well that we can, for larger groups or family groups, we can book villas on Lake Atitlan, all of which are more than likely very opulent with spectacular views of the lake. So we're going to jump now up to Peten, the heart of the ancient Mayan world. This is where the Mayan civilization reached its peak 1,000 years ago, and today you see the ruins of that beautiful civilization. What's wonderful about Guatemala is it allows for people to go and experience the modern Mayan people, the living Maya, who still comprise over 50% of the population to this day when you're in the highlands. So in Antigua and Lake Atitlan, this is where the majority of the modern Mayan people live today. And with all of those activities that we described, it really gives you a chance to connect with local people, to understand the modern Mayan person. And then you get to go up to the Peten region and take a step back in time to what was the peak of their civilization thousands of years ago. Tikal, of course, being the most famous, but there are so many other Mayan ruin sites, many of which are barely visited by travelers, and gives your clients a real exclusive experience. We can set up a Mayan ceremony in a number of these ruin sites for someone that wants to have a very spiritual experience within the ancient ruin itself. I mentioned in the invitation to this webinar, and as I mentioned earlier, talking about Francisco Estrada Belli, or the archaeologist, there are opportunities to actually travel by helicopter to several of the lesser visited or more inaccessible Mayan ruin sites in the Peten with an archaeologist who then gives you the tour of their site itself. El Mirador is probably the most famous. It's inaccessible except by helicopter or a 3-day walk through the jungle. Most people opt for I think certainly most luxury travelers would opt for the helicopter. That is run by Richard Hansen. He's a famous archaeologist from UCLA. He's been unearthing El Mirador for the last 30 years and is a very engaging personality and obviously incredibly knowledgeable, probably the foremost archaeologist in the world today. We can arrange for a tour with him, and you can do heli hopping from El Mirador to Yaxha to Tikal, and experience the breadth of the ancient Mayan ruins in a single day. Lots of adventure activities as well, zip lining, canopy tours. There's also kayaking on Lake Peten, hiking in the jungle. Again, for those that want to really have an adventure, a 3-day trek to El Mirador is possible as well. Wildlife in the Peten is excellent. You're likely not going to see a jaguar in the upper left unless you're very lucky, like I was and our fam group was when we were at Tikal a year and a half ago, and we actually saw a jaguar after having lunch, walking by the restaurant in the ruins where we were dining. An incredible experience, but pretty rare. But howler monkeys, spider monkeys, incredible bird life, cotamundis. There's a lot of wildlife to experience just walking throughout the ruins themselves. It's not even that you have to have a specific wildlife tour. Just going to visit some of the Mayan ruins gives you that wildlife experience. Maya Trails can also set up glamping inside a Mayan ruin. So we do this at Yaxha and Huaxactún, which are two lesser known, lesser visited Mayan ruin sites. And these are, you have a proper bedside table, shower, toilet, and you get to, to experience the Mayan ruins after dark, which again, you want to talk about spiritual and atmospheric. This is certainly that. For those that want to go one step further and actually spend some time at an actual active dig, spend the night or visit, we can do that. As I mentioned, El Mirador in the north is possible. Also, Francisco Belli's dig, Holmul, is currently active as well, and he welcomes clients to come and spend the night and descend into the ruin, the dig of the ruins itself. So this is really something that needs to be done by helicopter. It is accessible by vehicle, but it's quite an arduous journey, and it is dependent upon the time of year when the archaeologists are at the dig themselves, and also based on the weather. So, and what I love here is we do a lot of trips in Africa as well. I have a number of African clients. We're always looking for opportunities for sundowners. Who doesn't like to have a drink with a beautiful view? Guatemala offers that, especially in the Peten. At Yaxha, you can climb a Mayan ruin in the twilight and then enjoy the views over the jungle as the sun sets over the Yaxha Lagoon. So as the sun begins to set, you hear the jungle come to life with the howler monkeys, the spider monkeys, the birds. Again, it's a real incredible immersive experience and a great way to finish the day. In the Peten, luxury options are a little bit more limited, but there are 3 that we typically look to for the high-end traveler. Camino Real Tikal is the closest to the Tikal ruins. It's only about a 30-minute drive to Tikal, to the national park site itself. Boluntiku is a brand new ecological luxury resort. It's located right on Lake Peten, which is the lake that is located in this part of the Peten. A much smaller property than Tikal, Camino Real Tikal, but it also is quite a bit farther from Tikal. So we're looking at more along the lines of about an hour and a half to 2-hour drive to Tikal. But it has a beautiful location right along the lake, kayaking and other lake activities you can do right from the lodge itself. Las Lagunas Boutique Hotel, probably our top luxury property choice in the Peten, very accessible to Tikal, only about 45 minutes, very close to the airport as well, but it's in its own ecological reserve on a small lagoon. So you feel like you're a world away, but you're really very close to the airport as well as to Tikal itself. And then heading back into Guatemala City. Guatemala City gets a bad reputation unfortunately, because there's a lot to be seen and experienced in the city. I love the Condé Nast article for the fact that they really talk about the resurgence and the revitalization of Guatemala City, and in particular the historical district. A lot of the modern art that is being cultivated in Guatemala City. But of course, it also hosts some of the world's best and foremost Mayan museums, archaeological museums, cultural and Mayan art museums. One of those that Maya Trails has an exclusive insider connection to is the IXCHEL Museum, and this museum is probably, well, is the best museum for Mayan textiles in the world. And Jimmy, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about how we have that connection and what guests can do at the IXCHEL Museum.
Basically, there's a room named after my great grandfather, because he was very well known in the travel industry. So there's a basic room named after him, and then my wife, she's also on the board of directors. So we got basically Maya Trails is the only company that has the insider access, where we can go inside the vault where they have the special each typical dress from the ancient Mayas, and we go in with the curator, and the curator explains the whole process, how they take care of it, how it was born. So it's just an amazing experience, and it's a insider that we're the only ones that have it.
So I really recommend spending some time at IXCHEL, and especially for those clients that want to have that real hands-on immersive insider experience, to do the vault tour, to go and see some of these incredible ancient handicrafts, textiles and huipiles and cortes, skirts of the Mayan people that have been collected by this museum. So spending some time in Guatemala City is definitely worthwhile if you can convince your clients to do that. The historic center now has been cleaned up, and there's some beautiful architecture and a lot of really nice restored what's the architectural type? I can't think of what it is in Guatemala City. Jimmy, what's the type of architecture in Avenida Sexta?
Basically, it's colonial style in Avenida Sexta.
Okay, so yeah, there's a lot to see, and a lot of great local restaurants. It's actually, you can go to the bar where Che Guevara actually spent some time plotting his revolution and where Miguel Asturias, who is a Nobel Prize winner, penned several of his books. So a lot of history and really exceptional architecture in this part of Guatemala City, if your clients have the time and the interest. We can also do a cooking class with some of the top chefs in the city at a beautiful cooking studio in Guatemala City as well. So for those that want to have a little bit more of the higher end, chef taught type of cooking class versus the community-based cooking that we talked about in Antigua, that's available in Guatemala City. And for those of you that know Zacapa rum, Zacapa is one of the world's best rums, and it's from Guatemala City, or it's from Guatemala, and there's a wonderful tasting room located in the city where you can taste a variety of the types and the years of Zacapa. Again, for the culinary interested client, this is a must-do in Guatemala City. It's something that we can do if they're staying in Antigua, they want to go back to the city to do this rum tasting, or we can actually bring someone to Antigua to set up that kind of tasting as well. And in Guatemala City, there's not a ton of options for boutique hotels. La Maquilada is really the only true boutique hotel, smaller. It's about 10, 12 rooms. It has these lush gardens, which give you a little bit of an escape from the city, which is nice. The rest of the properties are larger, more international chains like the Westin, but of a very high standard as well. The Intercontinental and the Vista Real. All of these are very close. Save for the Vista Real, the other three are within 10, 15 minutes of the international airport, so very convenient for an arrival or a departure hotel as well. And finally, just to give you a little bit of a little bit of an overview of how you can construct a luxury itinerary in Guatemala. This is our must-see Guatemala luxury edition. It's a week-long trip, starting in the city, heading to Antigua, doing that walking tour, having dinner at one of the best restaurants on day 2, doing the coffee experience on day 3, and then taking a helicopter to Lake Atitlan, spending the day touring the different villages of the lake, or if you have active travelers, going on a kayak and a hiking tour, staying at Casa Palopó, the Relais Châteaux property on the lake, experiencing Chichicastenango, the modern Mayan market, the Mayan supermarket of the highlands, and then taking a helicopter either back to the city, or you can actually go straight up to the Peten. This is obviously a little bit more expensive, but cuts out quite a bit of extra time, and it takes about 50 minutes to an hour to fly from Lake Atitlan to the Peten area up in the north. Following day, day 6, we can do a helicopter tour, basically heli-hopping from various Mayan ruin sites, go and tour El Mirador with Richard Hansen, the archaeologist, and finish the day with the SUNDOWNERS at the top of Temple 216 at IXCHEL, and that night descend to your glamping setup in the middle of the ruins at IXCHEL. Following day, do a Tikal tour with an archaeologist, and then helicopter back to Guatemala City, or connect onto Belize for a longer trip. The thing about Guatemala, because of the short flights, you can do a long weekend. We have a couple of 4-day trips here. I think 5 days really gives you a little bit more wiggle room, but you can really do it in a long 4-day weekend, arriving, heading to Antigua, doing an Antigua walking and coffee tour, and then flying up to Tikal to experience El Mirador and Tikal by helicopter out the following day. You can also connect Antigua and Lake Atitlan in a short 4-day trip. Base yourself from Antigua, doing the walking and the shopping tours, and then do a helicopter transfer to Lake Atitlan for a village tour, and then fly back to Antigua for the last night. So these are just very short overviews of some of the types of itineraries Maya Trails can create for your luxury travelers. All right, a little bit longer than 45 minutes, but hopefully it was interesting and useful. We've got a couple of questions here, so I'm gonna go ahead and start those. Let's see here. Rum tasting. Jamie, can you talk a little bit more about the Zacapa rum tasting in Guatemala City?
Well, basically, we have it now in both cities. We got it in Guatemala City, and we have it also in Antigua now. There's a place called La Casa del Ron, and it's made by the Zacapa family. The Zacapa family goes way back by the Botran family, and it's won so many prizes, and the world famous Diageo is now distributing the Zacapa. So basically, you find Zacapa anywhere in the world. You could be in a cruise and anywhere in the world, and you ask for a Zacapa, and it's there.
It's fantastic. If you go to Guatemala and you don't try Zacapa, you really missed out on a cultural experience and a culinary experience for sure. I definitely recommend adding a Zacapa tasting to any tour, and you can combine it with a sundowner as well, with a Guatemalan sundowner. Question about helicopters and cost and logistics, Jimmy. Maybe you can just give us a general idea of what it would cost to fly from Antigua to Lake Atitlan, and timelines, how long that flight is, things like that, and how the logistics work from getting picked up in Antigua to flying to the lake.
Okay, the logistics from Antigua to Lake Atitlan, it's about a 30-minute flight. It's an awesome, spectacular flight because you fly out, checking out the volcanoes, and then you go through the highlands, and then you fly in the 3 volcanoes inside the lake. So it's just a spectacular flight. It all depends on the type of helicopter that we use, depending on the amount of passengers, depending on the weight. That all depends, but roughly that's a 30-minute flight, and that would be depending on what helicopter we use, it could be from, let's say, $1,000 to $2,000 that flight.
Got it. And you get picked up in Antigua. Do you have to go back to the international airport, or are you able to be picked up in Antigua itself?
Get picked up in Antigua. You go up. There's this, where the glamping site in Antigua is. It's called Santo Domingo del Cerro. It's owned also by the Casa Santo Domingo. So the chopper picks you up there, and then it takes you straight in. Let's say if you're going to Hotel Island, it takes you right on, basically on their dock. That's where you get off. Or Casa Palopó, you get right off Casa Palopó, and that's pretty much it.
A question on the sailfish season, Jimmy. When is the sailfish season, and what is a general idea of what a one-day fishing trip would cost from Antigua?
Okay, a one-day fishing trip, once again, it depends on the size of the group. If we use a smaller boat, if we use a catamaran boat, it all depends. Also, if they want to have the lunch on board, if they want drinks on board, but we always do the whole thing with drinks. If they do catch a mahi-mahi, we bring it on board and we chop it up and we do, what do you call it, a ceviche. So basically you're having straight on board the ceviche, and we bring snacks, we bring drinks, we bring zacapa up, and the famous gallo beer also. And then the season, it's split into two seasons. Basically, you can fish the whole time of the year. You got good fishing, but there's two good seasons where you got one would be from January to April, and then the other good season is from October to December. No, September to November.
Got it. And that takes from Antigua, that is, I said about an hour. Is that pretty accurate to get from Antigua to the coast?
It's about 45 minutes to an hour from Antigua to the dock. And then you head out, and then it's about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour boat ride out, depending on where the good sites, the good fishing sites are.
Got it. Excellent. Question about logistics for and timing for the archaeologist tours in, so for example, El Mirador. Is there a particular season that's best for that, or when Richard Hansen is there? Can you talk a little bit about how you guys organize those archaeologist-led tours?
Yeah, the best, basically it's year-round also, but the best season is when we have, let's say, for El Mirador, when Richard Hansen is here, because we can go the whole time of the year, but when he's here, that's the full experience, because he's the only one who has the access, the keys to his, let's say, his vault, where he's got his special things that he's discovered in the site, and they have it in a vault where he's the only guy that has that key. And for example, Homul, the same thing is when Francisco Estrada Belli is in site, because he gives classes in Tulane, so he's half of the year in Homul, half of the year in New Orleans. But we've had a case that we contact Francisco and we say, look, we need you down here, and he says, just fly me down and we'll get to it.
Yeah, I think if it's one important point of clarification, if you want to have an archaeologist lead the tour, that can be done easily year-round. It just, as Jimmy mentioned, it just requires to fly that person down, to fly Francisco down from Tulane, where he's a professor. He, I think, is at Homul. If you actually want to visit his site with him, for example, he's usually at Homul from about May or June through our summertime. So which corresponds well with the peak tourist season nicely. So there's a difference between visiting the active archaeological site, which does really depend on when the archaeologist is there, versus if you want to have Francisco or Richard give you a tour of Tikal or Yaksha. Those can be done any time of year, just depending upon their schedule, and then the cost, of course, to fly them down to Guatemala.
And just to add, it's not just them two that we have. We have a couple other that are really good. Let's say we have We have the one from. We have Barbara Arroyo. She's in charge of a site in Guatemala City. And so we got basically like about 5 or 6 really good archaeologists, well known, that are up, available year round.
And that's a great also point as well, that you don't even necessarily have to go to the Peten, although we highly recommend it because it is the heart of the heart and soul of the ancient Mayan world. But you can experience some Mayan ruin sites in the highlands as well. So you have the sites in Guatemala City, you have IXCHEL in the highlands between Antigua and Lake Atitlan. So there are ancient ruins. They're not of the same size as you have in the Peten, but if you have clients interested in experiencing that, the ruins, but can't take the time to get up to the Peten, there are options in the highlands as well. Cool. I think any other questions? I think we're done with questions for now, and we're at an hour plus. So I think we'll wrap it up. I just want to thank everyone who attended for your attention and for your questions. We will send this out as a recording, so if you missed any of it or had to jump off for a phone call, what have you, you can go back and catch up on the rest of the presentation at a later date. You can see our contact details there for Jimmy as well as the rest of his team. Jimmy is a hands-on director, but his team is fantastic, and I will send out contact details for the rest of the team as well in my follow-up. And then I'm located, as I mentioned, in Seattle, and we are, basically on the same time zone as Guatemala. But if you ever have questions and you want to talk to someone who has more of an outsider perspective, feel free to give me a call, and we can talk through itinerary ideas, brainstorm ideas, or answer any questions that you may have. So again, thanks very much. Hope you all have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to welcoming you and your clients to Guatemala for a luxury trip in the very near future.
Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.